Made Bruce sauce.
We were talking about the popper that you make, and you said you made a.
Poured water on the ashes. Well, the lie'd run down, that rye'd run out, and it'd be plumb clear. We'd set a vessel under that and catch that lye, and
Now
then
you saved your ashes, did you?
yeah,
About the straw, you had to put straw
we'd
in the
take
bottom.
put the ashes in straw in the bottom of the hopper, let's keep the ashes from running down. So we took the ashes out of the fireplace, we poured them in that hopper till we got it full. And then we'd pour water on it, and run that lye, what's called dripped lye, and we'd just send that into a big pot, put a grease in there, and put it to boiling, and boil it down till it thickened, and that was a soap then.
Well, did when you were making now what was I going to ask, did you have to have a certain ash? Was certain ashes better than other, or just any ashes?
Hardwood, hickory, would make better ashes than dried wood, like you take popper slab or something like that. The ashes wouldn't be strong, but now you burn hickory wood, and they take the ashes and you put water on it. I tell you got lye then you would make soap out of. Why, I made this great big barrel of that soap, Folks lived in the mountain on our place. They didn't know how to make soap. I'd make soap enough for myself and them too.
Is that right?
Yeah.
What, did you save your grease?
Yeah, that's the skins, and the grease, that you'd have that you didn't want to use. Every little scrap of meat that you didn't want to use, you'd save that and make soap out of it.
Well, you could eat the meat skins. A lot of people ate meat skins after they got the grease out of it, so you really didn't throw anything away,
No,
did you?
we sold everything, and I know my mother always taught me that she said anything that she couldn't use herself, she wouldn't sell it to somebody else to use. And Dad had a lot of cows, there, and we'd have off a big bowl of butter, pretty yellow butter, and we thought we didn't use, we could sell it on the market. One day she took out a big bowl of pretty yellow butter and was working in it, and she found a spider in that bowl of butter, pretty butter. Well, now, if she'd have been dirty, she could throw that spider out and sold that butter, and somebody'd eat it, never know that spider's in it. But she took that big bowl of butter to the house, got her a can of lye, opened it, made that bowl of butter into soap. She taught me now that way that I mustn't sell anything that I wouldn't use myself for somebody else to use. Now, she was honest about anything that way. And one woman's telling me, that sounded awful to me. She had some buggy beans, and she happened to find them out this buggy. She couldn't use them. She says, you know what I done? I took them beans to the store and sold them. That sounded awful to me.
Oh, wow. Well, you had to be thrifty, and you had to, of course, I guess you could have sold your buggy beans, and she could have sold her butter if she'd have wanted to, but she's an honest woman. Now, I wanted to ask you, of course, your age, you wasn't so far from a Civil War, and then World War I came along in your time. Do you remember much about World War I?
Yeah, well, I can remember much. I don't remember too much about that because I had three nephews that had to go, and one of them killed, blowed up, never even got his body back or nothing. He had just blowed up.
In France or Germany?
The First World War, and where he's at when he's killed. Well, another one, he come back just nearly dead. He finally died out. And another one then was the three of my nephews killed in the war. Yeah, there's three of them.
Killed?
Huh?
No, not killed them.
You said one died
Smith's
later.
boy and
That's World War II, huh?
Smith's boy was killed. No, he was killed in the First World War, Marlo. Yeah, he was, because Clay was big. Stanley was, Clay was getting nearly old enough to go in the Second World War.
I guess that's right.
Mama Reed went to school with me.
Huh?
Was George Harmon your nephew?
Yeah.
George and Wyndham
He
and
was in
Ben
the First
Ward.
World War. I know that.
And
Ben Ward, Mama.
Huh?
Ben Ward, but you
Yeah.
had me mixed.
and
Ben
Ben
Ward.
is Ben Ward your nephew?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
was he in World War One?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So you had nephews in World War One, and then of course World War Two came along
Yeah,
later,
yeah,
didn't
several.
it?
Yeah.
Some of us great nephews in that.
Yeah, I know.
Great nephews in World War Two.
And then to get standing over and the doctor told him not to send him off, but you know he had heart trouble, nerve trouble, and they turned him down. And some of the people, they lied and they took and done everything they could. They got so mad because they didn't take Stanley right on, and they done everything they could against him, and even lied on him, just told willful lies. And he's talking to me about like the last time he's here. He says they're all dead. He says I'm still living. That worked against him so hard.
Well, that was some people deserted from World War One. I didn't. Someone told me there was right many people in this area who deserted or stayed out of World War One.
And Stanley, he went and was examined, and 2 doctors been a treating him, and the last doctor, Dr. Love, told me, he says they'd sent him off, they'd just pinched him in the back the way his health was. He said his heart is too
weak.
2 years too large, and then he had the nervous breakdown.
Uh-huh.
And the doctors just turned him down, and the people all got mad because he didn't go right on anyway.
Well,
They
that's the
could
way
have
people
shine about it. They talked awful hard about it.
Well, you've seen a lot of things happen in your day, haven't you?
Oh,
a lot
yeah.
of changes.
Oh, I was all right smart.
From making your soap and from washing on the washboard to the automatic washers and all these things.
Yeah.
It's a big changes in your time.
Oh, yes, yeah. It's sad how much changes is. And I just think now, back in my days, the lights that we had little brace lamps with little #1 burners. That's what we had to cook by. You just think now, I think people now grumble and growl about hard times and so on. They've got nothing to do now but just touch a little button, they've got the light.
Yeah.
Back
right.
then, every few days, it just wash lamps, globes, fill up lamps, trim smut wicks, and now nothing to do but just to touch your button. And I think people now growling and grumbling about hard times. I think they should be a little more thankful at these times they're having.
I guess we're not thankful enough.
Well, that's the way I feel about it.
You're
Just
right.
had to go back now like I did when I was a young girl. What would they do?
I don't know. Who made your shoes when you were a little girl?
Well, this one other, the John, a Matney feller, John Matney called him. He is an awful good hand. My daddy, he'd have us all a new pair of shoes made every fall till I was grown. I was a grown woman before I ever had a pair of shoes bought. I was a grown woman.
Before you ever had store-bought shoes.
Yeah. And how I got them, foxes got to eating up chickens and everything, and I had some goslings, and the foxes killed my goslings, and it made me so mad. I was so mad about the foxes killing my goslings. And Dad, he got that sort of flyer for me. He went and set 2 traps one night. He caught 2 red foxes, and he killed both of them and skinned them and took them to the store, the hides to the store, and got me a pair of shoes. That's the first pair of shoes I ever had bought.
So you got even with them for getting your goslings,
Yeah.
didn't you?
I just laughed about it. It's kind of funny. I was hurt so bad about my goslings being
Well,
killed.
Those were the necessary animals. I mean, fowls, the goslings and the geese and all
Yeah.
that. Well, I know, I'd say you're right. We're not nearly thankful enough. When you made a dress, when you had a dress made in those days, did you have a dress pattern, or how did they determine how big to make it?
Well, my mother, she just guessed at it. She just cut a pattern. I know my first dresses she just cut a pattern, and she cut her patterns, you see, for the suits and everything. She just had a way, she learned how to cut patterns and make clothes herself. And after I got grown up then, the clothes are mighty plain. After
Yeah.
I grew up, then there's a dressmaker then not far from there, and some girls, they got her making cutting them patterns, and I got getting their patterns after I grew up, making my dresses, by different patterns, what mother cut. And of course, I made all of my clothes, till I was married. Most of them, hardly ever bought anything ready-made.
You've had a good life, haven't you?
Well, I've lived it through.
Yeah.
I think I get studying about it sometimes. I think it's pretty tough, but I reckon it could have been worse.
Well, you may have had a better life. We talk about we hear it said that those were the good old days, and they were. I'm sure they were tough, but you had time a little bit to appreciate it. I mean, to enjoy.
Oh,
things.
yeah. We could work of a day, and then of a night, there wasn't nothing to disturb us, and this is a night meeting or something, we'd go to that. But now that's all the time Dad's boys was out of a night, was to go to meetings
Is that
of a
right?
night. They didn't.
Or did they ever have molasses makings? Did they ever make their molasses at night? Or
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they'd
That's
boil
in the old
molasses in the early part of the night. They'd try to get 2 runs a day, make one in the morning, and put another one in the evening. It'd be dark, when they get the last run off.
Did they have an old mill that they would grind the cane to get the juice from, and
Yeah.
then they'd boil that juice down into molasses? Did they ever have any taffy pullings or anything?
No, they never did have anything like that. No, I can remember I always read to see the lakes this time come. Mother'd get us out early carrying that old cane juice, they'd grind out till dark, and that'd sit all night. Next morning we'd have to get out and maybe be cold and frosty and fill up our boiler. I'd rather see the nicest baking time come.
How about the thrashing machine? Did you all do your thrashing of your grain?
And, well, Dad raised 1 crop of wheat, and the road was rough in there, rough and rocky, and it's hard to get a threshing machine in there. He didn't raise but 1 crop of wheat, and he had that ground. And after that, then he got him a sawmill, he had a shingle saw and a circle saw and a grist mill all. And he'd saw out lumber, and they'd put on a wagon, big load of lumber on a wagon, and haul it to Elk Park. Now, they didn't bring flour in the stores around home there then, that time. They did later. But they brought flour bagged up, at Elk Park. He'd send him a load of lumber at Elk Park and swap it for flour.
Oh.
And we had flour that way, and the people around didn't have wagons, and meal, they had to eat the cornbread. They couldn't go to Elk Park, and carry flour back. And they told it, my brothers, they got big enough to drive a team, and they'd just go out there, and take that lumber and swap it for the flour and coffee. That's all. We made everything else we used on the farm except flour and coffee. They'd buy the flour and coffee out of the store, but the rest of what we used on the farm, we made it on the farm.
Now, you used the honey for sugar, didn't you?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we had honey, and Dad kept about 30 stands of bees.
30?
Them old passion gums, We'd have everything covered up with honey every year. The bees, there's so much timber back in there. Poplar and limb, they'd get rich off the flowers of that. Of
Poplar and what other kind?
Lynn, kind of filmed there, they call Lynn, and it bloomed all the bees to death, and they'd get rich, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They'd take a big dishpan full of honey out of every gum.
Did he rob the bees himself?
No, well, after I got up, then they got to. Boys got big enough. As soon as they got big enough, you know, they done the robbing. Then me and the little boys, then after my older boys left, we'd do the robbing. Me and the
Really?
little boys.
Did you ever
would.
get stung by them?
Huh?
Did you ever get stung by the bees?
Hardly ever. We'd rock the guns up, you know, good the bees couldn't get out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What'd you do that at night after they got in?
They'd take the, you know, they wrap sheets around the bottom of the gum, smoke the bees all down, and they'd go on the outside, you know, and that sheet was spaced around there, they couldn't get out. We'd take the honey out. When we took the honey out, we'd fasten that all back, you know, put the tops, you know, you had to take the top of the gun off and take the top out, the honey out from the top. You know, it's not like it is now. And we'd take that out. Well, then they had to nail that all back. Well, when they got that all nailed fixed back, they'd loosen that sheet, they'd jerk it off and run, you know, keep them getting stung. Well, they'd all go back in the gum then overnight.
Uh-huh.
They'd rob late of evening, you know, after they'd wait till the bees all come in. You know, they'd work till it'd get near the night. Then they had to rob them after the bees all got gathered in. If they didn't, you know, they'd come in and sting them while they was robbing. And they'd wrap the sheet around, then smoke them down on the outside of the gum, take that honey out, and then nail it back and jerk the sheet off. When they done that, the bees, when they took the sheet off, the bees had all, see, they smoked the bees down. They'd put smoke in there and smoke them down. They'd go down and go out, get away from that smoke. They couldn't stand the smoke. And they'd all go back in the gum then and be ready to go to work next morning. They'd go to work.
Start out all over again, wouldn't
Yeah. Then they'd fill that top full, and that was the honey then for the bees lived on during the winter. That was their winter honey.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, you said the old-fashioned beehives, did they make them out of a tree or?
Well, there's a kind of timber growed around there. It'd go, well, it'd be that big, I guess, around. Call it black gum. And there'd be holler trees around, and the outside wouldn't be bigger than that. And that wood all rot on the inside. They'd cut that down, you know, and saw the logs off about 4 foot long, and clean that, they'd have them iron outfits, you know, they could made in the shop, you know, they could drag all of that old rot stuff out and clean it out good and clean.
Kind of burn it out?
No, they'd have to rake it out. They had a
Rake it out.
scraper, you know, what they'd call it, but anyway, they had a concern made in the shop they clean that all out good and clean. Then they'd you know, they had no sawmill then, sawing the plank, they'd just have to split a plank, a board, and shave it down as thin and nail that on the top. And then they had brace and bits then till they cross, you know, they had to have cross pieces in them to hold the honey up. They'd cross that, and then they'd cut down little notches, you know, about that big in the bottom of the gum, and then set it down flat, and them little notches now for the bees to go out and in and carry the honey. That's all the air now they got, was just in those little places.
Your daddy, a disciplinarian, he was right strict, wasn't he?
Huh?
Your daddy was right strict, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah.
Did they have a lot of big baptizings in your day?
Yeah, well, yes, they had their church, you know. There wasn't any church close there when they moved there, wasn't a sign of a church. Well, Mount Gilead, that was, I guess, it's 2 or 3 miles away. Mother would go down there.
To Mount Gilly.
Yeah. She joined the church when she was 14-year-old, and she would go to church, but Daddy didn't join till he was getting way up pretty old. And finally he did. They had a church then. They got him a church back up in Presley town, they called it. Presley's lived back up there above my daddy's, and they had got him a church up there, and he attended church just as long as he was able to go. Him and Mother both did. They watched for the churches, you know, and I told him my dad was awful stingy, but when he was expecting a big association for that, up there at that church, now I tell you, he fixed for that. He got busy fixing that big association.
Did you have to do a lot of cooking?
Oh, well, yes, we had to cook. I know one time we had 18. We just had 9 beds, and we had 18 besides our own family. We didn't have enough for all of us to sleep. And there's some girls, you know, that Minnie, Lillian's mother and her sister, they wanted to come there and spend the night that night. My brothers were teaching 2 of them. They went and got them and brought them there that night. And we had to sleep on the floor. There's so many of us didn't have beds for all of them.
Is there?
Yeah. And I know I thought we'd have to cook. We cooked. I baked, and we made marmalade and pickled beets, and we fixed up everything. And I thought we wasn't going to have any fresh meat. We thought we had cured meat. We had big barrels of cured meat. I thought we wasn't going to have any fresh meat for that association. I thought we never could cook without some fresh meat. Well, Daddy didn't have anything he wanted to kill. Somebody told him that no man are going to kill a beef pretty close. He got out Friday morning at daylight and went to see about getting him some beef. I told him he looked out for the association. And that man killed a good fat beef, and he bought 1 hindquarter of it. And it's big, he couldn't carry it home. He hired a man to bring it home for him. So when they got home, I had a big pot ready. I got my knife and I went to cutting on the meat. I cut me a big, now they all went to association but me. I stayed and cooked dinner that day on Friday. And so I cooked a big fat pot of that fresh meat, and you know, I had all kinds of vegetables and pies and cakes that I'd baked. I got dinner and they all gathered in there and eat dinner. There's one girl, I shouldn't tell that, she's from Baptist Valley. She thought she was a little better off than the rest of us. She got sort of sniggered and laughing around. That didn't suit me. And like she's sort of wanting to make fun. Minnie and Addie, you know, that's Lillian's mother and her sister. They come in that night, and boy, they took that girl over. They put her in her place in a few minutes. Minnie says, that's Lillian's mother. She says, I like to see people act like home folks. She put them in their place in a little while.
Did you mind having to do all that cooking?
No, sir, I didn't mind a bit. You know, I was young then and felt well, and I didn't mind it. Of course, you know, everybody would be kind of worried trying to get everything fixed right. But now I didn't mind cooking all of that, doing that cooking, because Dad was so interested. If I hadn't been interested and picked up that association, I guess he'd have given me a whipping.
He's looking forward to that,
Yeah.
wasn't he?
Yeah, he looked forward to the association.
Primitive Baptist.
Were you a primitive Baptist?
Yeah.
She wasn't, but her people were.
People were primitive Baptists. Well, it's they still have, you know, big meetings places, but I don't believe do you think they go to homes like they do then? If I saw 18 people coming to my house for dinner, what would you do, Myrtle?
Oh, I get so nervous of cooking for one and two. I'm awful nervous. I have to cook for
Well,
one.
you know, now they go in cars. They don't go like they did then.
When our last mother used to have about that put up with, you know, she was a primitive Baptist and to have association or just what to call a foot wash. She near to work us to death. I have worked for my son-in-law. You have to fix every bed, and she had it. When we were first married, there wasn't too many cars. I've gone through that too.
You see a lot of the primitive Baptists in the edge of Allegheny. You know, there's primitive Baptists. Well, they'd come over there to that church, that association. Well, you know, most of them would come to my daddy's plenty of nights, you see. And there was Friday night, Saturday night, you know, we just had a house full.
Oh, you did.
But we happened to, we had grapes, right? Big vine of ripe grapes right close to the house, plenty of good mellow apples. And we had plenty to feed them on, but
Just
we didn't have
prepared.
enough beds. There was some cables back close to where my brother lived, and they was dealing with the whiskey, you know. Well, law went in on them, you know, to try to arrest them. Well, they had a battle. They call it the cable battle. Cable battle. They killed two of the officers.
Oh, they did.
Yeah, and I went to my dad and mother, close to my oldest brother, where he lived. They was afraid that they'd get him into it, trying to help arrest these bands. There's three of the cable boys, and they just went shooting and killed two men. And they was afraid they'd get my brother into it, and they sent me and the hard girl out there after my brother for him to come home, and me to stay with his wife, and and let him go down there at my home, at my dad's home, you know, and stay till that settled down. Afraid they'd get him in there and get him killed, and so we went out Sunday evening picking. He said this man right close to the house, man, pretty huckleberries. He said let's go and pick 'em, and me and the girl that went with me, hard girl, and his wife and him, we went out to picking huckleberries, and we was just picking huckleberries, and I'd fill my bucket, and we all sat down to rest. And you know, them three cable boys come right around above us. All of them had shotguns. One of them had his arm in the swing. There's a cabin, you see. There's in the mountains. And boys, now, at one time we got still. We just afraid maybe if they'd see us, they might think it was officers after them and just go to shooting. And we was scared to death. And we just sat as still as we could, and they got out of sight. We went to the house. And my brother, now he went to my dad's, and left me and his wife now and two little babies there by ourselves in them mountains. You know, it's all rolled up there, and this place big enough for a house and a yard cleared in the mountain. And the cow was a mile from home, and we'd take a turnabout. I was big enough to milk, and we'd take a turnabout and go to milk. I'd get down in that path to the field. I could just feel the cables taking hold of me every minute. I was scared to death. But I'd go milk, and me and her stayed there a week that way now, us by ourselves. In them,
Her husband didn't want to be deputized except for
them dark woods. And
So your brother didn't have to be deputized to help arrest him?
he stayed at my daddy's, you know, and he wasn't deputized. But these men, I believe they went to Kentucky, and I think they went over there, though. They brought them back. They put all three of them in penitentiary.
Oh.
And, you know, my brother and these cables, they's all good friends. They never had a bit of trouble anyway. And I know when one of the boys come back, first one got out, he come to my brother's. I was there one day, and he got talking about, he says, we was so tore up and so worried. He says, we just saw you sitting up in there, we don't know how to manage to. He says, we might have just went shooting at you. He said, they're just so tore up and just got to where they cared for nothing much. And honestly, I told him that the people that went to try to arrest Cable for selling whiskey done things just as bad or worse than the Cables are doing. I think just better let the Cables alone, save two lives.
Yeah.
And them a selling whiskey wasn't doing them any more harm than what some of them was doing. The way I felt about it.
Yeah, it's bad. That was real bad. Well, is there anything that you can think of? Anything else that
No.
you'd
I guess
like?
I've worried you out now.
No, I don't want to worry you.
No, it's not what bothering me.
I'm enjoying
I
this.
just enjoy talking about old times, that way, old happenings. I don't
Oh,
mind it
I
a
think it's
bit.
great. Well, that's what we're trying to learn. We're trying to learn about old
Of
times.
course, I tell them, I told a fella from Spruce Pine over there at home getting old history. He's asking me some questions. I says, I look here now, I'm well educated. I says, I finished the 4th grade. Well, he says, I finished 4th grade too.
When did you come over to Ashe County to stay with Myrtle?
It's been, it'll be 4 years next April, won't it, Marlo?
That's been over 4, I guess.
No, it'll be
it's 4 rounds.